Right. Hello, everyone. This is Robert from the Gefyra team, and today I'd like to talk about the Gefyra Docker desktop extension. Before we dive into the extension itself, let me give you a short explanation about Gefyra and what we're trying to do here. Usually, as a developer working with Kubernetes, I'd like to get as close as possible to production, right? And let's say in this demo, we are working on a front-end application, and we'd like our container to talk to some backend within Kubernetes. So how this usually works is I go with a browser to my Kubernetes cluster. My request goes through a load balancer, which hits the front-end pod, which probably talks to some backend, maybe a database, maybe an API, whatever. And it goes back, right, to the front end, to the load balancer, hits my browser, page is rendered. So what we want to do with Gefyra now is we want to work on the front end, right? And we're spinning up a front end container on our machine. And through an intermediate component we call stowaway, we're talking to the backend within Kubernetes and have a much production-like environment actually to work on our front end application. Let me briefly show you how the applications look like. The backend application is pretty simple. The Flask app that just returns a JSON with a color blue, which is leveraged by the front end, right? So the front end has an environment variable to know how to request the color. So this is the service URL, basically. We take it, we extract the color from the JSON, and we use it in our backend for the HTML then, right? Here we got the Kubernetes manifest. It contains the backend, the front-end pod, the service for the backend, so it's actually reachable, and the front-end service so that it's reachable from the outside. Let's check if it's actually available. Oh, there it is. Yeah, exactly. Perfect. So there's the hello world from within the cluster. Totally cool. And now actually we want to work on this front-end application, right? And we want to leverage the backend so we have kind of production-like conditions for our development. So let's go to our Gefyra Docker desktop extension. We want to run a container in Kubernetes. Gefyra has more capabilities. It's not completely implemented for now in Docker desktop, but it will come soon. First thing we do, we need to select our Kubernetes configuration. So the kube config here is kind of the default kube config. And we use the context of the Docker desktop Kubernetes where our services run in right now. We could also connect to a remote cluster. So we would probably need to know about how to reach it, but the Docker desktop cluster runs locally, right? So what we'd like to do now is we need to configure the container we want to run. So imagine the run of Gefyra, the Gefyra run command basically, as a Docker run on steroids. So first we select the namespace we want our service to run in or our container to run in. We select the image. So we got the Gefyra demo frontend here, which is the image we built. Good to know actually here is you don't need to build the image locally if it's available from a public registry. So we are scanning the Kubernetes cluster and the namespace you selected in front for available images. So all the workloads are scanned, the deployments, the pods, and every image we find here is displayed within the dropdown. We're overwriting the command, so the usual command goes without the debug flag, but we're using the debug flag here since it allows us to hot reload the code, restart the application within the container without actually like restarting the container itself, right? another really neat feature from Gefyra is we can copy the environment from another workload. So what we're doing now here is we find the pod back and the pod front end. And you saw beforehand that we leverage an environment variable to connect to the backend, which is called SVC URL. So the service URL is made available in our local container as we copy the environment variables from the pod. Furthermore, we have a port mapping, pretty simple. We map port 5003 to the outside, and we have a volume mount. So we actually mount the code from our local machine into the container, right? So here we go. Let's run the whole thing. So Gefyra makes sure that the cluster side component and the client side components are actually working and installed. If they're not, Gefyra installs them into the cluster, sets up a local connection to the cluster so the container can talk to the services within the given namespace. This is actually what's happening now. We have an operator which takes care of resetting everything as soon as we lose the connection or we terminate the connection. And now we're waiting for the connection to be ready. That works. We're setting up a client-side component here, which is called cargo. Spinning up. Here we go. The container is started. It should be available on port 5003 then, right? So Gefyra, the Docker desktop extension, displays the logs here. Let's first check if the application is actually available. And there it is. Hello, KCD. This is a demo I also gave at the KCD Munich. There's a video on YouTube if you're interested. And you already see it quite looks different because I changed the code from what is actually running in the cluster. But first, let's check the container. So we can just copy the command here and see, all right, this is within the container, the shell now. And here we got the environment variables, which kind of look like all the Kubernetes stuff we're kind of used to. And oh, there it is. Just wanted to grab it, but here's the service URL, which kind of looks like a Kubernetes URL, right, within the cluster. So obviously it talks now to the backend default service. And what we can do now is basically we can change the code. So let's go to our front-end application. And let's say hello from Gefyra demo. Save, and it's instantly there. So we have now our local container, which talks to the backend, which could basically be a database, cache, any API you have available in the cluster. And we have only the code we want to work on running on our machine now, which is kind of neat. And that's basically the whole demo. So please, guys, if you have any feedback, ideas on what we could add to Gefyra, on how to improve, please let us know. Please let us know what you think of the Docker Desktop extension. We think it's an amazing tool to enhance productivity. And yeah, just hit us up on GitHub, contact us, open an issue, shoot us an email. We're really appreciating any feedback. And yeah, that's it. Thank you so much.